I've been watching an interesting phenomenon play out both here and on Facebook, and I would love to know if y'all are seeing this as well. Okay, here it is. Folks who voted for Trump don't want us to kick them out of our lives, to cut them off. They want to desperately present themselves as good people. I've seen it both from friends and relatives on Facebook. Like, please, I just voted for the economy. Politics isn't personal. This is a private decision and it doesn't have to get in the way of our friendship. But I've also seen it on this app where folks are like, hey, please don't stop following me. Please still like me and watch my content so I can get paid. I'm not a bad person. I'm just an independent. I just voted for lower gas prices and lower prices of eggs. We can still be mutuals. You can still watch my content. Or folks who are content creators and are like, unfollow me if you voted for Trump. I've seen folks in their comment section being like, no, we can agree to disagree. I can still like you. I can still follow you. Y'all literally voted against the safety, well-being, rights, and future of the folks you are now asking to continue to have relationships with you. Why are you so desperate to be perceived as not a bad person? As like, don't let our differences get in the way of our friendship. It's not that big of a deal. Like, why don't you just own what you did? Aren't you proud of what you did? Why are you so desperate to continue relationships with folks who you want to see deported, denied access to healthcare, folks whose lives will become immeasurably more burdened and stressful because of what you did? This desperate need to be perceived as a good person and to not be cut out of people's lives, the inability to handle the distress of other people not liking you, the distress of having to realize the consequences of your action are irreparably damaged relationships. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when white people think that it is worse to be called racist, to have their racism pointed out to them, than it is for people to experience the racism that they are perpetuating. The discomfort, the agitation, the distress that it causes to have to face the fact that you are racist. You think that is worse than people experiencing racism. And I think there's some of the same going on here. You think it is worse for people to think badly of the choices you made than the harm that will be done by the choices that you made. You want to do the bad thing, but still be perceived as good and likable. It is worse to be disliked than it is to actively harm other people. I hate to say it, y'all are going to have to face the consequence of your actions. This is just the first hen returning to the coop, and all of your chickens are going to come home to roost. Trump voters who are upset that their loved ones, their neighbors, their friends, their book talk girlies are cutting them out, are blocking them, and you don't understand why. You don't understand why we can't just be nice to each other despite politics. I thought this quote was really apropos. You don't see me as a person, so I won't see you at all. We are making healthy boundaries to protect ourselves from people who will actively work against our safety, the health, well-being, and lives of our community members. We cannot change your behavior. The only thing we can do is create boundaries to protect us from your continued betrayal of us, of your neighbors, and frankly, of yourself. You have shown you will be complicit in your own oppression to gain some measure of proximity to power, some illusion that you're going to be the next Elon Musk, and that makes you dangerous. You voted for us to lose our rights. So now you lose access to us altogether. Okay, so I was talking about how it's okay to establish boundaries with Trumpers, to say, I'm not going to give you access to me or my children because you have demonstrated that you are not safe. You will vote against my well-being. You will throw me under the bus for your pipe dream of lower gas prices, or because you hate Black women more than you love me. And I was saying that we cannot change Trumpers' behavior. We cannot change anybody else's behavior. The only thing we can do is make decisions to protect ourselves from that behavior. We can only control our behavior. If you've seen my videos on how to protect yourself from toxic boomer parents, this message from me is not a new one. And one of those folks asks, how are you not pushing your views on others and even threatening people to exclude them in your life? Again, I've covered this many times when talking about toxic parents. Establishing a boundary is not a threat. I'm not making any threats. I am making choices about my own behavior. I'm not asking you to change your behavior. There's no threat involved. Your choices have consequences, and now you will have to face them. Why are the Trumpers in our lives so upset that we are establishing healthy boundaries? We are withdrawing, we're disconnecting. We're saying you're facing the logical consequence of your actions. You aren't a safe person, and so therefore I will protect myself from you. And I thought this was an interesting comment, and I totally agree with it. These folks know the benefit of the community they will now be losing out on because of their voting choices. It's weird how folks who vote for toxic individualism in their own self-interest still understand that they need people and get distressed at the idea of not having access to that help in that community. What are they going to do now when they need someone to drive them to the Planned Parenthood? And they definitely can't tell their husband or their boyfriend or their mom. What's going to happen when the folks who were willing to extend themselves, give of their labor and energy, are now choosing to give that labor and energy to folks who didn't undermine our rights, didn't vote to increase our suffering? The distress at losing those connections and that support, I think, is a significant component of this. I think it'll be a good lesson in community for them. A lot of folks who voted for Donald Trump and thought that it wasn't going to come back to bite them or wouldn't impact their relationships with other people are having big fifis on social media right now. Pause to read some of these, but only if you feel like giving it your energy. No matter who won, be respectful. It could have been either candidate. Be respectful, win or lose. Girlie, I don't owe you respect at all. Don't damage relationships over politicians who don't even know your name. How about don't vote for a rapist who wants to make the people whose names you know suffer? Here we go, another version of that. Kindness and respect. You already chose hate and disrespect. These folks cannot handle the fact that they are facing the logical consequences of their actions. That folks are establishing healthy boundaries to keep themselves safe from unsafe people. People who have shown that they will throw us under the bus for the false promise of lower gas prices and their thinly veiled white supremacy and misogyny. I thought this was really relevant to the convo. The right wing is upset because they are currently being judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Okay, this person comments frequently on my videos, so I'm aware of their politics and their persuasions. In a video where I was talking about creating boundaries with Trumpers who have shown they are not safe by the choice they made at the ballot box. She says, so I have kids who think completely different than me. We still love and respect each other. So you're saying you would cut one of your kids out of your life? No, because I have no fear that my children are going to turn into bigots. I have zero fears that my children will vote against my safety and the safety of our community. So why would I need to cut them off? I think what you're saying here is that your children have views aligned with mine, and you are fearful that your positions warrant other people needing to protect themselves from you. And if that is the case, I would ask you to consider why it is that you hold viewpoints that undermine the safety and well-being of folks you say you love. If your politics make you fearful that your loved ones will need to separate from you, it's a good time to examine your politics. Should we cut off family members who are Trumpers? I think this is a more nuanced conversation than a lot of us have been having in our current highly emotional state. And I want to give a shout out to Casey Davis, who said something that I totally agree with, and I need to be communicating better. I think there is a huge difference between cutting off people on social media who are not safe, who voted against our safety and well-being, setting boundaries with folks in our lives, our friends, our neighbors, our family members who may be Trumpers, saying, I'm not going to give you unfettered access to me anymore because you are not a safe person. I am no longer offering my free labor, time, energy to rescue you from the consequences of your own actions, especially the impending consequences of your choice to vote for a rapist felon who wants to strip you of your rights, cripple the economy, and make every working class American suffer. Okay, now hear me out. I think there's a difference between that and deciding to totally cut off family members. And I think there's valid reasons that we should continue to have relationships with guardrails, with boundaries in place, with a small select group of people, if we have the capacity, if we have the energy. And the reason that I say we should be present and involved in the lives of some of the Trumpers that we know that are close to us is because we know that one-on-one relationships are highly effective at helping people overcome bigotry, develop empathy, and start to care about issues they otherwise wouldn't care about. Now, again, this is only if you have the capacity. But there was quite a lot of research done after 2016 about why folks fell into QAnon. And it's because they were isolated. They had no sense of community or belonging. No stable forces in their life speaking critically and reasonably. And that made them susceptible to radicalization. And the more we continue to isolate right-wingers in echo chambers, the easier it is for them to other us, dehumanize us, and justify policies that enact real harm against us. It's a little bit like that Christian witness, right? And again, I think only if you have the capacity to do it. But I think that if there are people that you want to continue to reach out to, that you still have hope that especially as the screws are turned on them over the next few years, that they might see the error of their ways and might be receptive to a different way of looking at things. I think it's totally valid to have relationships with those people. And I don't think we should be judging folks who continue to have that contact for that purpose. Over the next 2 years, the next 4 years, we are going to have to reach those folks, persuade them, change their minds. Now, I think the impending circumstances of our country will be persuasive on their own. But if you've decided to keep some Trumpers in your life for this purpose, you're doing the work of protecting yourself and your children, but you're not totally cutting folks off. You're establishing boundaries and keeping channels of communication open. I would love to hear what that looks like for you. I have exactly 2 relatives I am considering doing this with. And if you are likewise considering or making the choice to do that, I would love to hear how that's looking for you. Why do you believe people who voted for Trump are not safe? Legit question. Catherine, I have answered this question repeatedly over the last few days. I have organized my thoughts on this subject into a convenient playlist. You can find it at the bottom of this video. I encourage you to go watch those videos, and if you still have questions, if it's still unclear to you after watching them, please come back and ask again, and I will be happy to elaborate further. So I've been talking about why is it that Trumpers are so upset that we're establishing boundaries with them, limiting our contact, or in some instances, completely cutting them out of our lives. Also, sorry, my room is a bit of a dark hole right now. This is winter in Oregon. Gray and rainy. Perfect. Anyway, someone said, these folks are really desperate for our friendship. And that's really weird considering they vote against our rights and our safety. And I guess my question is, do they really want our friendship? Or are we useful to them? Are we supplying labor, empathy, filling some need for them? Honestly, I'm struggling with this a bit. Is the love really reciprocal? How could they possibly love me like I love them? How could they love their community, their neighbors, and yet allow the pleas from that community to fall on deaf ears? And I guess I'm also struggling with why is it that they still want access to us? It just seems so inconsistent with the way that they voted. So is it friendship or are we useful? Most people don't see themselves as bad people. Oh yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. I think most Trumpers see themselves as good people. That's why they cannot handle it when we call them bad people. Or not even that, just say that they voted for reprehensible, hateful policies. Most people need to believe they're good and moral, especially evangelicals and LDS, religious people. They need to think that they are moral and righteous, right? Unless you're a malignant narcissist or completely unhinged for your own psychological well-being to be able to function every day. You need to believe that you're fundamentally an okay person. So our brains rationalize a lot of our behavior. They shift our perception in order to protect our psyches. Because your average person could not function under the crippling weight of believing that they're an evil, awful person. So of course Trumpers need to reject the idea that they are bad people. They, Trumpers, conservatives, see friendship differently. Friendship is transactional, to their benefit only, and we provide a lot of benefits. I think this is incredibly accurate. A big part of this is because of religion, because of evangelicals, because of LDS folks. Relationships are punitive in that context. Your bad behavior needs to be punished. Your sin needs to be punished. That inherently sets up a dynamic between people that's about either gaining something from them or enacting retribution. Secondarily, it's the fact that we live in a capitalist system. So of course, everything is transactional, especially relationships. Toxic individualism, the foundation of capitalism, is what can I get for me and mine? What can I extract out of this relationship? And we know the Republican Party is the party of white Christian nationalism, slobbering worship of capitalism. So of course, they're going to view friendships through that lens. So if Trumpers voted against our rights, they think we're all deviants and baby killers, immoral woke snowflakes. Why are they all melting down that we are creating healthy boundaries and withdrawing our connection from the Trumpers in our lives and our communities? Why are they so upset that we are saying we need to protect ourselves from you because you are not safe people? I thought this comment was insightful and I totally agree with it. Another TikToker said we are an escape from their coercive circle. We can be free, intelligent, creative without judgment. They must fit their role in their circle that is very restrictive. Yeah, as an ex-evangelical, I totally agree with this. In my experience, I'm the person my conservative friends can talk to about naughty things like gardening, smutty books, the taboo subjects they can't talk about without fear of shame and punishment in their conservative circles. They can count on us, confide in us in a way that would be unsafe with their own people. So I hope those boundaries cause them to introspect about what kinds of relationships and community are actually a benefit to them. They, conservatives who are mad that their relatives and friends and neighbors are cutting them off because they voted for the decrepit Cheeto, hate consequences for their actions. Yeah, this is so wild to me because so many of them are evangelical, conservative Christian, LDS, conservative Catholic, and their whole worldview is shaped around sin and punishment. It's all about how the wages of sin is death. Every tiny thing that you do should be punished. That one impure thought, that is enough to separate you from God and to condemn you to hell. The consequences they believe in are so outsized. The consequences they dole out are likewise outsized. And yet they are bitching and moaning about facing the logical consequences of their choice to vote against the safety and well-being of family members and neighbors. They showed they are unsafe. The consequence is folks creating a boundary to protect themselves. And they see that as an outrageous punishment, which just seems so contradictory to me. I've mentioned a number of times lately that a number of us are setting up boundaries with the Trumpers in our lives because they have shown that they are not safe people. And this commenter says, my intuition is that there are ways that white people can feel more emotionally safe around folks who vote against them. Black people have had to learn that for centuries. And I think this is very true. The ways that I'm talking about safety and risk when it comes to engaging with Trumpers obviously is going to look different for white people. We are categorically less unsafe, and I think there is a measure of obligation for us to attempt to reach out and make connections to change hearts and minds. But that doesn't mean that Black folks are the only folks who need to be really careful about protecting their safety. LGBTQIA folks, immigrants, I don't just mean undocumented folks, DACA folks, any immigrant right now. And obviously women of reproductive age in a country where there are a number of states that dangle out $10,000 incentives for other citizens to rat out women who leave the state to go seek reproductive health care. I mean, J.D. Vance wants to make it so women of reproductive age have to prove that they are not pregnant when they get on an airplane, or if they are, they can document they are still pregnant when they return to their home. The fact that this is our horrifying reality now does mean that the Trumpers in our lives who have an incentive to snitch on us are absolutely unsafe. And we need to think real hard about what any engagement is going to look like. What's the solution for the approximately 53% of white women who voted for the decrepit Cheeto for a third time? Are racism benefits so hard to kick? This is a really good question. I think that they don't realize what it's like on the other side of white supremacy, the patriarchy, and capitalism. I think they struggle to conceptualize of how the world would work without those systems of oppression controlling everything that they do. And I think that they are fully deluded in the belief that they benefit from those systems. Just because they manage to carve out a small measure of security, more than people of color have, because they get a little bit of proximity to white men in power. They think that's a win, that's a victory. They think they've arrived. They have these blinders on where they cannot see how limited not only their worldview is, but their freedoms are. And they falsely view those blinders as protection. In the ongoing conversation about why Trumpers are upset that we have created boundaries with them or gone no contact, like if they were so anxious to vote against our safety and well-being, why are they so pissed that they don't get unfettered access to us anymore? Melody here makes an excellent point. We cared about them when their husbands forgot their birthday. We took them out to lunch when they were exhausted and burnt out and let them vent. We were just safe people. Yeah, so this first part, all of those white women who voted to uphold the patriarchy and white supremacy, who voted to strip themselves and other women of rights, to risk the safety, the lives of the women in their community, of their own daughters, so that they could have closer proximity to men and approval from men. Those are the same women who would come complain to us about all the ways that their husbands were lacking as partners. We were the shoulders they cried on when their husband had an affair or just displayed perpetual weaponized incompetence. So now who are they going to go cry to? Because within their own community, they have to put on the face of being the perfect little helpmeet, the long-suffering, uncomplaining wife who stands by her husband's side, where he's king of the castle and can do no wrong. Once again, this is not our lesson to learn. And it's going to be a real hard one for these women who voted against every woman in America.